Let's come to a comfortable seat and just kind of align our spines, settle into our bodies, see what's going on in there today. So just find that place where you can tune in to everything that you're feeling. Begin to breathe a deep, slow Ujjayi breath if you can. That kind of helps us focus on ourselves, and it also quiets the central nervous system a bit. Check in also with thought processes, emotions, energy. Just kind of get a total snapshot of how you are right now. And then let's go ahead and bring our palms together in front of the heart, and we'll set our own personal intentions for practice today. Whatever it is that you need today, right now, be clear about it, and then all you have to do is allow it to happen. When you're clear about your intention, take a deep inhale. Exhale through the mouth. And then we'll relax the arms and roll the shoulders back. And we're just going to come on to hands and knees. We'll let you do a tiny bit of movement first just to get loosened up. And so that might look like a traditional cat-cow with an arched back as you inhale and a rounded back as you exhale. It might look like a little bit of lateral movement, more of a side bend motion. It might look like the hips circling. Just loosen up your spine for a moment. And then we're going to turn the toes under and go straight into downward facing dog. Just planting the hands, pressing the hips back. If there's any small movement that you need, like pedaling the feet, you can do that here. Just take a breath and get some length in your spine. And then we'll walk the feet forward, keeping the knees bent, relaxing the neck completely, and just dangling in ragdoll. Remember, your arms can just kind of flop and hang, or you're welcome to grab the elbows. One more breath here just to lengthen the spine. And then on your next inhale, you'll come all the way up, reach the arms up and overhead. Exhale, bring your palms together in front of your heart. Inhale, reach up and stretch. Exhale, fold forward. Try and get the fingertips down to the ground, even if you need to bend your knees to get there. And then if you can, leave the fingertips down as you pull your chest forward. So this is a half forward bend. So look up halfway and then fold all the way forward. We'll step back with our left foot. So we have a right foot forward lunge. Just hold this for a couple of breaths. Our emphasis today is going to be on opening up the front part of the hips. Iliopsoas, a place that for most of us gets tight or shortened because we sit too much, and even if not, it can also be a place where we store stress. So in this lunge, you might even start to try and access that. If you straighten your left leg, your back leg, but let the hips drop and kind of surrender them down towards the mat, you might start to feel the front of that left hip. Let's go ahead and drop the left knee down. Bring the arms up and overhead. I want you to be really conscious of tilting the pelvis back. That's that kind of tucking under of the tailbone. When you do that, that lengthens the front of the hip, and then when you start to let the hip move forward, you'll Elongate all of that area that has a tendency to be too short. Take one more breath here. And then just bring your right hand to the top of your right thigh and kind of intensify the stretch just a little by maybe leaning back or a little to the right. So that left arm is kind of reaching back. Keep your pelvis tilted back. Now, bring your left hand down to meet your right hand on that right thigh. Keep your tailbone tucked under and the hips moving forward, and reach your right arm behind you. And you might even feel a little bit more. Take one more breath. And then we're going to bring both hands down inside the right foot. And I'd like you to scooch your right foot forward a little bit. Then see if you can come on to your left forearm. So in this position, we want to try and lengthen the front of the left hip. You can use a block under that left forearm if you prefer. Maybe the right one comes down too. But if you're not feeling this on the front of your left hip, you can scoot your left knee back a little bit. Let's take one more breath here. And then come back up onto your hands, and your hands can go on either side of your right foot. And we'll just extend that right leg, coming into a little hamstring stretch on the right side. So flex the ankle and toes, try and pull your heart forward. And then let's all take the right knee back to meet the left knee and take a child's pose. So the reason I want everybody to take a child's pose here, even those of you who will be doing vinyasas, is because this is the perfect counter pose to everything you just did. So that left front hip got really lengthened. Right now it's really shortened. So it's good for you to know that if you start feeling too much, this is a good place to go. From here, those of you that want to take a full vinyasa, you can go ahead and start those. The rest of us, I would love for you to slide your hands forward and let the torso come down for a low cobra if you can. And what we want to do here is, once we've got the whole body flat on the mat, again, I'd like you to kind of tilt the pelvis back. In this position, it's like you're pushing your pubic bone into the mat. Pull forward a little bit with the hands and just barely lift. So not only is the heart opening, but the front of the hips is too. Just make it a small lift, and then we'll take a second downward facing dog. Just really stretch back in your down dog. And then we'll step the left foot forward. And we're just going to hold the lunge for a couple of breaths here. And kind of like we did on the first side, you might consider trying to find sensation in the front of the right hip, even in this position. So if you straighten your back leg, your right leg, and let the hips drop a little bit, you might be able to start to feel a little something on the front of your right hip. And then we'll go ahead and drop the right knee down. Let's take both arms up and overhead. Remember, we want to tilt the pelvis back. That really helps our aim of opening up the front of the right hip. And then while the pelvis is tilted back, the hips move forward. So we're looking for sensation on the front of that right hip. Then take just your left hand to your left thigh. Let's maybe reach back a tiny bit with the right arm, or it might be more to the left. You'll have to decide what's the best little enhancement for that right front hip stretch. Keep your pelvis tilted. And then let's bring the right hand down to meet the left hand on that left thigh. Hips are still moving forward. Rotate your left arm behind you. Twist and look over that left shoulder, and you might feel it even more. Both hands come down inside the left foot. I suggest you scooch your left foot forward a little bit, and then you're welcome to use a block if you need to, but we're gonna try and get the right forearm down. Maybe the left one comes down too. And if you're not feeling it on the front of your right hip, you can always slide that right knee back a little bit more. Now, you may also be feeling it in your left hamstring. That's fine. You can think of that as a bonus today. Take one more breath. And then hands on either side of the left foot, and we'll extend the left leg and get into our left hamstring on this side. Ankle and toes flex, tailbone pulls back, heart pulls forward. And then from here, we're gonna step forward to a standing forward bend. And I'd like you to just pause for a moment. So your standing forward bend is the standing equivalent of your child's pose. This is the opposite of what we're doing, but only if we're doing our forward bend right. So I've been having you tuck your tailbone under or tilt your pelvis back. Your standing forward bend, you're tipping your pelvis forward, or you can think of it as trying to point your tailbone up towards the ceiling. Back, let's take one more breath here. Really stretching out the back of the thighs, letting the front of the hips shorten. And then inhale, reach the arms up. And exhale, bring your palms together. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale and look up halfway. And then exhale all the way back down. We're going to step back with the right foot this time. Nice deep lunge here. So just like we did the first time through, I want you to try and straighten your right leg. Let the hips drop. See if you're starting to feel something in the front of your right hip. And maybe if you can access it, tilt your pelvis back. That should change things. You can think of it as tightening your right glute, your right buttock. Now we're going to go ahead and drop the right knee down. Go ahead, if you can, and take your left hand to the ceiling. You're going to have to just be really mindful of knee issues, everybody, so only do what you can. If you can, take your left arm behind you and look at it, kind of like we did before, except now our hand is on the floor. Tuck your tailbone under and let the hips drop down. You should already feel this in the front of your right hip. For those of you who feel like you can go deeper, you bend your right knee and put that foot in your hand and continue to let the hips sink forward. This changes things somewhat dramatically. So if you are tightening your right buttock, you're really feeling this on the front of your right hip. One more breath here. Release that leg down. Hands on either side of your left foot. Again, we're going to extend the left leg. Let the back of the thigh and glute stretch. Let the front of the left hip shorten. Those of you that take vinyasas, off you go. The rest of us are going to go ahead and shorten the right hip by coming into child's pose. If you need to do Sphinx to lengthen the spine, please do that. If you feel like you can do that Cobra, again, with the pelvis tilted back to help open the hips, then you can try that. Do whatever's best for your body. And then we'll all meet in downward facing dog. Really press your hips up and back. Right foot steps forward. We go ahead and try and get into the front left hip in our lunge. So the left leg straightens, the hips drop down, and maybe this time through, you can tilt your pelvis back, which would be tightening your left glute, your left buttock. And then we drop the left knee down. We're going to keep the left hand on the ground and just go ahead and rotate and take our right hand behind us. Tuck your tailbone under, let the hips drop. You should already be feeling this. If you can, you bend your left knee and you just put that foot in your hand. Again, that will change it dramatically. That kind of amps it up. But keep your pelvis tilted, hips sinking. Just breathe. If you have your left foot, release it. Both hands down, extend your right leg. One more time. Pull the chest forward. And then we'll step forward to a standing forward bend. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, bring the palms together in front of the heart. From here, we're going to be stepping back with our left leg, spinning that heel flat, getting our stance correct for warrior one. So your hips need to rotate forward, your right knee needs to be bent, your left leg should be straight. And here's the challenging part, at least it's challenging for me. In warrior one, you still want to try and tilt your pelvis back and keep that left leg straight. Let the hips drop until you start to feel a stretch in the front of your left thigh, left hip. Then the arms come up and overhead. Just take a couple breaths here. And even in this position now, I want you to put your right hand on your right thigh and reach back a little bit with the left arm or maybe a little to the right. And just see if you can get a little deeper into your left hip flexor. Good. Come on up from that. Straighten your right leg, and I would like for you to either interlace your fingers behind your back, or if you want a little bit more, you could actually grab your elbows, but that's going to help us keep our shoulder blades squeezed. Keep your hips aligned and begin to lengthen out over your right leg. So left front hip has been opening, right hamstring and glutes we're doing here, just like we've been doing in the kneeling series. Now, from here, we're going to take the hands down to the ground, swivel onto the left toes, and drop your left knee down. For those of you who have knee issues, you may want to flip onto your back and do a figure four stretch. Or if you want to access the front hip, you can just stay in a kneeling position and bring your hands to your thigh. Those of you that can do a one-legged pigeon, you're just going to walk your right foot over to the left side of the mat, drop your right knee down, and start to slide that left leg back. Now here's the deal. We're going to stay on our hands today. Just take a moment here. Obviously, you're feeling your right glute, your right buttock. Make sure that left leg is back far enough, because if you're able, I'd like you to keep a left hand in the center of the mat and reach behind you with your right arm. Some of you will be able to bend your left knee and grab your left foot with your right hand and begin to pull that foot towards your right glute. Keep your tailbone tucked under. This is pretty exciting. Take one more breath. If you're in a figure four, you can just roll over and join us, going straight to downward facing dog. Shorten it up again. All right, that left front hip is really getting some opening. We're going to make sure that the right one does as well. From this downward facing dog, go ahead and walk your feet forward. Remember, your standing forward bend is a counter pose to what you've been doing. So even if you need to bend your knees, you want to tip your pelvis forward onto the thighs, like your tailbone's poking up at the ceiling. And then let's inhale and reach the arms up. And exhale, bring the palms together. Now we're going to work into warrior one on the left side. So step your right leg back, spin your heel flat,
try and adjust your hips so they'll square off with the front of the mat. Your left knee is bent, your tailbone's tucked under, your right leg is straight and your arms are up. You're trying to let the hips drop enough that you're feeling something in the front of your right hip. And then we take it even farther. We just take the left hand to the left thigh and see if maybe we can dial it in a little deeper, maybe reaching back with the right arm, maybe reaching a little to the left. You're just kind of exploring where it feels best. And then we're going to come up from that, straighten the left leg, make sure your hips are still squared off, either interlacing your fingers behind your back or grabbing the elbows, squeeze the shoulder blades together and lengthen out over that straight left leg. Now we bring the hands down to the mat, swivel onto the right toes. If you're doing a lunge or pigeon, you'll drop your right knee down and walk the left foot over to the right side of the mat. If you need to, you can roll onto your back and do a figure 4 stretch. If you're coming into pigeon, right leg slides back until you feel your left glute. But then you just stay up on your hands, kind of let that settle for a moment. Let the right hand be in the center of the mat, and if you can, you just reach back over your left shoulder with your left hand, and that might be enough, but if you're able, bend the right knee and get that right foot, and you're pulling it towards your left glute, tucking the tailbone under. This should be your most intense front hip stretch yet, if you're able to do it. Take one more breath. And then if you're in figure 4, join us. We're all moving to downward facing dog just to stretch it out. Really take a couple of breaths to press through your hands, reach those hips up and back. Imagine here that you're trying to point your tailbone at the ceiling and trying to get the heels to touch the ground. Those of you that would like a vinyasa, off you go. The rest of us are going to counter pose in child's pose, and that should feel pretty good. Shorten up all that lengthened front hip. Take a breath or two. And then we'll scoot forward. You can come into Sphinx, you can come into low cobra, whatever feels good to you. And then we'll all meet back in downward facing dog. From this down dog, you're gonna walk your feet forward. Come to that standing forward bend, which is also a counter pose. So pause for an extra moment here, making sure your pelvis feels like it's tipping forward. And then inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, palms together in front of the heart. Okay, I know there was one day last week, or maybe it was the week before, that we did like the whole day of dancers. So you've had lots of practice with dancer. Well, we're gonna do a variation on a dancer pose today, specifically for the front of the hip. So we're not gonna be leaning or trying to look super beautiful. We're just really gonna try and get sensation in the front of the hip. And what's gonna be different about it is that it's opposite hand to foot. Yeah, so if you stand on your right foot first, your right hand is going to reach behind you, and you're going to try and grab your left foot. You'll notice when you do that, it keeps your thighs parallel. Your left arm can reach up. All we're going to do here is tilt the pelvis back, so you're pushing your pubic bone forward, lifting your chest, and you're just going to start pulling that leg straight back behind you. The more you tighten your left buttock, and pull the left leg behind you. The more you're gonna feel this on the front of your left hip. Take a couple of breaths if you can, even if you need to hang on to something. See if you can get that front hip stretch. And then release down. And we're gonna do the other side. That probably felt very different, but it gets us where we need to be. So if you stand on your left foot, you're just gonna reach back with your left hand and grab your right foot. Thighs are parallel. Right arm reaches up. Tailbone strongly tucks under, and you begin to pull the right leg behind you. You really, really focus on tightening your right glute so that front of the right hip opens. And release it down. Feet together, palms together. Inhale, reach your arms up and stretch. Exhale, fold forward. Pause in this last forward bend. Really tip the pelvis forward. Enjoy how that feels. Look up and lengthen halfway. And then back down. You can step back to plank if you're doing a vinyasa. Step back to hands and knees if you're going to be following me. And I want you to just do a couple of cat-cow stretches, arching and rounding. And then take a child's pose. Scoot into cobra or sphinx, whichever one serves you best today. And then downward facing dog. Just take a couple of breaths in your down dog. And then from here, we're going to shift all the way forward and lower down onto our stomachs. I want you to bring your forearms in front of you. That's so that you can rest your head on your forearms. So obviously our head and our arms are going to stay down. We're just going to be playing with a one-leg locust with the forehead down. Now, for some of you, this will be a really easy thing. For some of us, it's a little bit harder. If it's hard for you, like it is for me, it just means that we need it. What this is going to do is really, really tightly contract one glute. When your glute contracts, as you know from your practice today, the front of the hip opens. So, forehead rests down, your left foot stays down, everything stays down, except for the right leg, which we're going to lift. Now, as much as possible, I'd like you to have your right leg straight. It may not be perfectly straight, do your best. And push the pubic bone into the mat. You want to feel lots of tightening in your right glute, but not in the low back. Take a couple more breaths. Right leg goes down. Keep your right foot on the ground. And the left leg is straight. And it lifts. And you push your pubic bone into the mat. Try and lift that left leg. You should feel your left glute really tight. And lower it down. From here, everybody take child's pose. All the way back. Buns to heels, forehead down, hands by feet. Take a couple of super deep breaths into your low back. And then from here, just come up and swivel your legs around to the front and have a seat. Find your sit bones. We're going to do some counter posing. So just taking a moment in Dandasana. And I want you to see like how it feels to have your hands right behind you, like we normally do, pushing into the mat for that straight, strong, aligned spine. And then see what it feels like to maintain that spine and take the hands up. If your spine collapses when you do, it just means that we've got tight back hips and maybe need to strengthen this iliopsoas. If you can kind of do it, then go ahead and let your hands rest on your thighs. We're just going to take a couple breaths and check in. And then keep your right leg straight. Bring your left foot inside your right thigh. And we're just going to slowly, gently lean out over that right leg. So now you're shortening the front of your right hip, which was lengthening earlier. Come on up from that. We're gonna pick the left leg up and bring it across the right thigh. Have the left foot flat. Keep your right leg very active. Lift up through your chest and twist to your left. So you can either hug that left knee, or if you have the flexibility and would like the extra leverage, bring the right elbow or upper arm outside of the left thigh. Come back around, extend your left leg out, give the legs a little wiggle, and then we'll keep the left leg straight. Bring the right foot inside the left thigh, and lean out over your left leg. And then we'll come up from that, pick the right foot up, bring it across the left thigh with that right foot flat. Try and keep left leg active. And then we're gonna twist to the right. You wanna try and have a straight spine, relatively relaxed shoulders. Good, rotate back around, extend your legs and wiggle. So we're gonna play a tiny bit with a variation on a one-leg hero pose. Those of you with knee issues, you're gonna do a supported bridge if you've got a block nearby, or a regular bridge if you don't, even though we're gonna do regular bridge in a minute. Those of you who don't have knee issues, you might still want to use a block or a bolster or like something to sit on, but please honor your knees. We're not going to have a ton of pressure at the knee, but it is a rather deep flexion. So here's what I'd like you to consider. Some of you it'll be great for, some of you you're just going to go, oh no, I'm doing bridge. All right, if you can, you're gonna put your left hand by your left side and kind of rock your weight to your left hip. We're gonna go through this super slow. Your right knee would bend and you would put the top of your right foot on the mat with your second toe aligning with those lower leg bones. So no winging out of the feet. So you gotta have happy ankles for this too. And then we're not gonna just sit back down because that's too much for a lot of people's knees. What I'd like you to do is have both hands on the ground behind you, tuck your tailbone under, right? That's that backward tilt of the pelvis, and start to lift your backside. When you do this, and it doesn't have to be a very big lift, you should feel this on the front of your right thigh, right hip. Take one more breath. You could also slide a block up underneath you if you wanted it to be more passive. And then you're gonna put your bum back down and you can just extend your right leg out and circle the ankle. Remember, if your hips don't like that, just come into a supported bridge. We'll meet you there in a minute. If you're all right with that, roll your weight to your right glute. Bring your left foot back beside your left buttock, so it's not up underneath you. You make sure that your foot is aligned with your lower leg. And then hands are kind of behind you to take the weight. You tuck your tailbone under. So it's like you're trying to poke your pubic bone up and lift the hips a little bit. You should be able to feel this. You keep that knee on the ground. You take one more breath. And then you unwind, extend your left leg out. You can give yourself some ankle circles if you need it. Wiggle your thighs. Now our counter pose here before we roll onto our back is going to be boat pose. That shortens and strengthens the hip flexors, iliopsoas, top of the quads, all of that. And that's important because a strong muscle is a flexible muscle. So bend your knees. Grab behind your thighs. We're going to keep it pretty simple today. Lift your chest. It's very important that your spine stays straight. If at any point you start to feel this in your back, please come out of it. You shouldn't feel it in your back. Lean back enough that your feet come off the ground and extend your arms straight out in front of you. And just keep lifting your chest. Now, if you're a little more advanced, you can do alternating toe touches. No weight on the feet, you're just tapping them down. Or if you're feeling extra perky today, you can extend the legs. We're here for 3 more breaths. Try and keep your chest lifted. And then the feet come down and you may just roll yourself down onto your back. Hug your knees in. Rock side to side. So as promised, we are going to do bridge pose. It's going to be that final front hip opener. And so that's what we're using it for today. Even though it can be a heart opener, and it still should be, we're really focusing on the front of the hips. That doesn't mean that you're going to let your rib cage be collapsed. I still want you to lift the rib cage because that's what provides us that length in the lumbar spine. It keeps us from compressing in the low back. If you can, I'd like you to do this one without a block, unless it's absolutely crucial for you to use a block. Big toes touch. Heels are separated. Now, before we even lift, we're going to set this up. You can have your hands palms down beside your hips, or if you like interlacing them underneath you, that's fine. But here's the deal. Before you ever lift, ground through the big toe and little toe side of your feet and your heel. Your heel stays down, both sides of the feet stay down. Then you tuck your tailbone under, you flatten your back. So it's that posterior tilt of the pelvis. Then you lift. And when you're like, oh, that's not so bad, that's where the work begins. We tuck the tailbone even stronger. We push through the heels to lift the hips higher. You start to lift your rib cage. You see if you can tighten the muscles at the base of your glutes even more, poking your pubic bone up towards the ceiling, pushing through the heels to lift a little higher, lifting the rib cage to maintain length of the spine. You want to feel the front of your hips stretching and opening, and then breathe. And lower down. Hug your knees in and rock side to side. Good. So let's just kind of settle everything down before we start with our twisting and moving towards Shavasana. For those of you that it feels good, rock back and forth a little bit on your spine. If that doesn't feel good to you, just keep going side to side. So if you do the forward and back rock, I usually recommend you grab behind your thighs or your knees, and you're just kind of rocking up like you would sit, and rocking back. So as much as you comfortably can, roll back and forth a few times, and then when you're happy with that, you'll just come to rest on your back. We're going to take the feet wider than the mat,
And this time, instead of leaving legs one side or the other, we're just gonna be moving with the breath, but I'd like you to have that really wide stance, kind of like windshield wiper legs, right? So when you exhale, both knees drop to one side, right? And then you're gonna inhale the knees back up and both knees drop to the other side. Now, if you're breathing slow enough, you'll have time to play with this. Inhaling, legs up. If they drop over to the right, tuck the tailbone under and you should feel the front of your left hip. Inhale the knees back up. Exhale, drop them over to the left, tuck the tailbone under. You should feel the front of your right hip. So just kind of experiment with this. We're gonna do it a few times. The slower you breathe, the more time you have to access the front of the hips. Oh, and by the way, the wider your legs are, the better. So if you can get them to a stance where when you drop the legs to one side, your inside leg is kind of parallel to the long sides of the mat, that's optimum. But just do your best. Enjoy this. If you need to just make it a nice, relaxing, flopping side to side, I'm cool with that. But if you can, let's just play a little bit more with getting into the front of the hips, because this is the tail end of it. So you'll go one more time on each side or whatever you feel like you need to really kind of get into that hip and feel even. And then when you're somewhat happy with everything, let the knees just prop together for a moment. Keep the feet wide. Just take a breath here. If you feel like you need to in this position, you can tilt the pelvis back and flatten the spine. You can play with that. Just be curious about what happens when you move your body in certain ways. And then we'll go ahead and hug the knees in. Give them a good squeeze, rock side to side. And then I'd like you to keep your left knee hugged into the chest. Extend your right leg all the way out into the ground. And then from here, we're just gonna come into our twist. If you need to modify it, both knees can bend. Otherwise, your left arm opens out to the left and you're gonna use that right hand on that left leg to bring it all the way across your body. And let your left arm open out. So what you should ideally have here is maybe something close to 90 degrees at the left hip, 90 degrees at the left knee. That just kind of keeps the spine lengthened and allows things to settle down a little bit. If you have a different version of a twist that you would rather do right now, be my guest. The main thing is to just kind of neutralize the spine after everything we've done, but we're trying not to shorten up that left hip too crazy much right now. Take 1 or 2 more deep breaths here. And then on your next inhale, just come on back up. You can hug your left knee in. Bring your right knee up to meet it. Feel free to rock a little bit if you need to. And then we'll just keep the right knee hugged in and extend the left leg all the way out. So right now, that right hip flexor is very shortened. We don't want to twist in this super shortened position, at least not today. Some days we do, but not today. So your right arm opens up to the right. Your left hand is going to be on the outside of that right thigh to start to twist yourself over. Try and get about 90 degrees at the right hip and 90 degrees at the right knee. And then just, if it's all right with your neck, let your head turn to the right. And we just kind of hang out here and enjoy a few breaths. Remember, if you need to modify this and bend both knees, please do. Always, always, I'm just making suggestions. I am certainly not giving orders. I want you to take care of your body first and foremost. Another breath or two here. And then on your next inhale, come on up. Hug your right knee in. Bring your left knee up to meet it, rock side to side. Now the ultimate front hip counter pose. We're gonna take the knees wide. We're gonna reach our arms between our knees and grab the arches of our feet and do a true dead bug. So this is what some traditions call happy baby. But in my tradition, it's dead bug, because once you get there, you don't move, and those happy babies move. You're gonna try and get your lower legs parallel to each other and perpendicular to the floor. In other words, straight up and down. Flex your ankles and then pull with your hands, like you're trying to pull your knees to the floor, and try and keep your tailbone flat, all at the same time. Those hip flexors are in a very shortened position right now. They might even be talking to you. Take a couple of breaths. And then you're just going to release the feet down to the mat with the soles of the feet together and the knees dropping open. Just take a moment here. In this position, things are lengthening out again. Just be really relaxed and passive here for a moment. And then on your next inhale, we're gonna flatten the back. So you're just pressing your low back into the mat. We wanna make sure your low back is really lengthened and comfortable before you move into Shavasana. So on your next exhale, you can relax. You'll feel the arch come back into your spine. And then one more time on an inhale, remove the arch from your back. In other words, tuck your tailbone under, poke your pubic bone up, press your low back into the mat, keep breathing. And then exhale, relax, and begin to extend your legs. Maybe the feet want to be separated a little bit. Maybe they want to be way far apart. You decide. Once you get your feet the right distance apart, roll your thighs in and out a couple of times. Let's make sure everything's totally released at the hip joint. And then just let your legs flop wherever they go. Make sure your buns are relaxed. They've been doing a lot of tightening. Your spine should feel lengthened. Your shoulders are relaxed. Your hands are below your heart, palms facing up. Your neck feels long. Your jaw is soft. Your eyes are closed. Your forehead is smooth. Things are feeling pretty good right now. Take a deep inhale. Big sigh. Just kind of settle in. You'll feel your body just going slack. When the muscles get really relaxed, they actually ever so slightly spread. So if you're feeling that, congratulations, your body's really relaxing, and we want that. Notice that your breath gets softer. Notice that even the thoughts kind of seem a little softer. Maybe they're quieter or slower or just not as insistent. And as you notice the thoughts slowing down and becoming less demanding of you, I'd like you to just simply watch your thoughts come and go so that you can become aware of the space between the thoughts, the pause between the thoughts. A lot of meditation teachers talk about your thoughts being like clouds drifting by. And if that is the case, then what we're looking at is the blue sky behind them, the space between the clouds.
If you're an artist, you understand the idea of negative space. That's what we're looking at. You might even think of it as the medium in which your thoughts are occurring. What is the background medium that holds your thoughts? That's where we want to put our focus. So when a thought comes into your mind, you'll know it, right? You'll know that you're thinking, and then you let that thought go, and there's a pause, there's some space, and then another thought comes. I want you to just be attentive to the space. So when another thought does come, recognize that a thought has come, let it go, and look for the space. If you find that you get carried away by a thought, you get involved in it, you get taken in by it, that's okay. Don't judge yourself for that. Just let that thought go and look for the space that comes after it. Begin to feel back into your body, just noticing how incredibly relaxed the muscles feel, how aligned the bones feel, how nourished your organs feel. Start to deepen your breath. Start to bring those small, gentle movements back. When you're ready, on an inhale, you can extend the fingers and spread the toes. Exhale softly through the mouth as you relax them again. And then as you inhale next, just extend through arms and legs, stretch. And again, exhale and relax. Let the feet come flat on the floor with the knees bent. And then if you feel like you need to, you can even hug your knees in. And we'll roll to the right side. Pausing for a moment, just resting on the right side. And then pressing yourself up into sitting. Ideally, finding that same super straight, aligned spine with minimal effort. In other words, you want it to be really straight and erect, but comfortable, no stress or tension to create this straight spine. We're going to be doing a solar breath today. So tonight is a full moon, which means there's a whole lot of lunar energy. And so we want to kind of balance that with solar energy. But I'm going to have you guys do a really advanced breath today. It's going to be an inhale through the right nostril and an exhale through the left nostril every single breath.
However, I'm not gonna let you use your hands. I know the first thought is like, what? Just humor me. You can have your hands palms up on your knees or thighs, palms down on your knees or thighs, or if you have a particular mudra that resonates with you today, do that. But we're not going to use our hands. We're going to close our eyes. These are just very deep and slow, relaxed breaths. But always inhaling through the right and always exhaling through the left, just using your intention. So straight spine, eyes are closed. Take a deep breath in through both nostrils. Exhale through both nostrils and just intend to inhale through the right and exhale through the left every breath. Just allow your breathing to go back to normal. And without any judgment whatsoever, just notice what that experience was like for you. Did you find it exhilarating? Did you find it frustrating? Did you just not even get it? Or was it like the coolest thing you ever did? Don't judge that, but just kind of pay attention to what your personal experience was with Surya Vedana with no hands. And then take this opportunity to just check back in. How is your body feeling right now? How is your breath? How are your thoughts and your emotions and your energy? And then bring your palms together in front of your heart. Let's just take a moment in gratitude. There's always a multitude of things to be grateful for. But today, let's just be grateful for this practice. This actual practice today, but this practice of yoga. How fortunate are we to have this practice? It can be a lifesaver for some. It certainly has been for me. This practice is so incredibly ancient and it's still here because it works. So what a fantastic gift we have. Just taking a moment in gratitude for that. And perhaps along with that, that we have bodies that can move us through the poses, breath that moves freely in and out of our body, and most importantly, the awareness of our bodies and our breaths in the practice. Take one more huge inhale. Exhale with a happy sigh. Palms to the forehead, just as a reminder to be present and to pay attention. Palms to the lips, reminding us to speak our truth, but in a way that can be heard. And palms to the heart, reminding us to keep our hearts open and to always come from a place of kindness and compassion and love, because that's what it's all about. Thank you guys for joining me today. Always my honor to lead. Namaste.